I stood in my mother's living room on Trad Street in Charleston, holding a champagne flute I hadn't touched, watching my sister Melissa laugh with her arm draped around Trevor's waist. My fiancé. Or my ex-fiancé, I guess, though nobody had officially told me we were done. The room was full of people I'd known my whole life. Aunts, cousins, neighbors from the historic district, people from Mom's church. Everyone was dressed nicely, the kind of nice you wear to welcome someone home after a long absence. There were balloons. There was a banner that said, "Welcome back, Melissa," in gold letters. My mother clinked her champagne glass with a butter knife and the room went quiet. She was wearing a cream-colored dress I'd never seen before, something expensive. Her hair was done. She looked radiant. "I have wonderful news," Mom said, beaming at Melissa. "My baby girl is getting married." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I knew that box. I'd seen it in my grandmother's jewelry drawer 100 times growing up. Mom had promised me that ring when I was 16. She'd said it would be mine when I got engaged. Melissa opened the box slowly like she'd rehearsed it. The diamond caught the chandelier light. It was my grandmother's ring. The one with the emerald-cut stone and the platinum band that my grandfather saved for 2 years to buy in 1952. Trevor wouldn't meet my eyes. He was looking at the floor, his jaw tight, his hands shoved in his pockets. Melissa slid the ring onto her finger like she'd been practicing the motion, tilting her hand so everyone could see. The room erupted in applause. People were standing up, hugging her, congratulating them both. I watched my mother hug them. I watched her cry happy tears into Melissa's hair, the way she used to cry at Melissa's dance recitals when we were kids. For years. I'd raised Melissa's twins for 4 years while she found herself in California, and this was my welcome home party gift. Watching her get engaged to the man who proposed to me 6 months ago in the gardens behind St. Philip's Church. Melissa turned to me then, still wearing that pageant smile she'd perfected in high school. The one that looked warm from a distance but went flat up close. She walked over, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor Mom and I had refinished together last spring. She leaned in close enough that only I could hear, her breath warm against my ear. "Thanks for the babysitting, Joe," she whispered. Then louder for the room. "Joanna, you're so good with kids. It's probably better you don't have your own. You'd be too tired to enjoy them." People laughed. A few of them actually laughed like it was a sweet joke, like she was complimenting me. My cousin Angela laughed. Mrs. Pemberton from 3 doors down laughed. Like Melissa hadn't just gutted me in front of 30 people while wearing my grandmother's ring on the hand of my fiancé. I set the champagne glass down on the credenza. The same credenza I'd helped Mom strip and restine last spring when she couldn't afford to hire someone. My hand was steady. I didn't say anything. I just walked out. Nobody followed me. I sat in my 2015 Honda Civic in the driveway for 20 minutes, maybe longer. The passenger side mirror was cracked from where I'd clipped a mailbox 2 years ago and never got it fixed. I watched the party continue through the bay window. I could see people cutting into a sheet cake. I could see Trevor feeding Melissa a bite, and her throwing her head back laughing the way she used to do for cameras when she was in pageants. My mother was refilling wine glasses. Everyone looked happy. I was 28 years old. I made $34,200 a year as a school librarian. I lived in a 600-square-foot apartment in the historic district and paid $950 a month in rent. I'd raised my sister's children from the time they were 2 until they were 6, and she'd just announced her engagement to my fiancé at her welcome home party, and my mother had given her the ring she promised me. My name is Joanna Reeves. And not one person in that room looked surprised. If what I'm about to tell you sounds unbelievable, I promise you, I lived it. And if you stick with me through this story, you'll understand why 3 months later, I didn't show up to Melissa's wedding. Why those twins refused to walk down the aisle. Why my sister's perfect day collapsed in front of 200 people. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to when this all started. Back to the Tuesday morning 4 years ago when Melissa showed up at my apartment. It was early September, just after Labor Day. I was getting ready for work, drinking coffee from my second-hand Keurig when someone knocked. I opened the door and there was Melissa, tanned and glowing in expensive athleisure I knew she couldn't afford. Behind her were 2 car seats with 2 sleeping toddlers. Chloe and Mason. 2 years old. Her twins. "I need to find myself, Joe," she said like she was ordering a latte. "Just a few months. Maybe 6. You're so good at this stuff." She meant responsible. He meant boring. She meant useful. There were 2 suitcases on my doorstep. One had clothes for the twins. The other had stuffed animals and a note that listed their allergies and nap schedules in Melissa's looping handwriting. She kissed them both on the forehead while they slept. She hugged me and said, "You're saving my life." Then she got in her car, a white Jetta I later found out belonged to some guy she was seeing, and drove away. I called my mother. I thought she'd be horrified. I thought she'd tell Melissa to come back immediately, to be a mother, to take responsibility. Instead, Mom said, "You've always been so nurturing, Joanna. This is probably good for you. You need something to focus on." So I became Aunt JoJo. I converted my tiny office into a bedroom with 2 toddler beds from IKEA that I assembled myself on a Saturday. I learned how to make chicken nuggets appealing to a picky eater. I learned that Mason had a peanut allergy and Chloe needed her nightlight facing the wall, not toward the bed, or she wouldn't sleep. I took them to the park. I took them to the pediatrician. I watched them take their first steps after Melissa left. I potty trained them. I taught Chloe how to tie her shoes. Melissa called every few weeks from whatever California beach town she'd landed in. She sent the twins matching outfits for Christmas and didn't ask if they'd outgrown their shoes. She posted photos on Instagram of sunsets and yoga studios and captions about finding her authentic self. I posted nothing. I was too tired. Then in year 3 I met Trevor. He was a contractor working on a historic renovation 2 blocks from my apartment. We met at the park. Mason's toy truck broke and Trevor helped fix it with a piece of wire from his toolkit. He didn't flinch when Chloe had a meltdown over the wrong color sippy cup. He said I was amazing. He said he'd never met anyone like me. 6 months later, he proposed in the gardens behind St. Philip's Church, the same place his parents got married. That's when Melissa decided to come home. She called on a Tuesday morning, her voice bright and cheerful. "I'm ready to be a mom again," she announced. Just like that. 4 years gone and she was ready. My mother threw her a welcome home party the following Saturday. No questions. No anger. Just balloons and a banner and a sheet cake from the bakery on King Street. And now, sitting in my Civic in the driveway, I understood something I'd been too tired and too hopeful to see before. My mother had never planned to choose me. Not once. Not ever. I started the car. I drove home to my apartment. And I started planning what I was going to do about it. But before I could plan anything, I had to survive the next 72 hours. Because 3 days after that engagement announcement, my mother called and asked me to come help set up for Melissa's bridal shower. I almost said no. I had my finger hovering over the red button on my phone screen. But then Mom said, "Melissa specifically requested you, sweetheart. She said you always know how to make things look nice on a budget." There it was. The thing I was good for. Making things look nice on a budget. I showed up at Mom's house on Saturday morning at 8. Melissa was still asleep upstairs. Mom was in the kitchen arranging store-bought cookies on a platter, trying to make them look homemade. She didn't hug me when I came in. She just pointed to 3 bags of decorations on the counter and said, "Can you handle the living room? I'm running behind." I spent 2 hours hanging streamers and blowing up balloons while my mother criticized the placement. "A little higher on that corner, Joanna." "No, that's too high now." "You know what, just leave it." I hung a banner that said "Bride-to-be" over the fireplace. The same fireplace where our family photos used to sit before Mom took them all down last year and replaced them with pictures of just Melissa. The shower started at noon. 40 women showed up, most of them Mom's friends from church and the garden club. They brought gifts wrapped in white paper with silver bows. I sat in the corner near the kitchen, refilling the punch bowl, clearing plates, making sure nobody's glass stayed empty too long. Melissa opened presents for an hour. Kitchen gadgets, picture frames, monogram towels with an M stitched in gold thread. When she got to a set of expensive hand-thrown pottery bowls, she held them up and said, "Oh, these are gorgeous. Joanna, don't you just love these?" "They're beautiful," I said. "You should get some for your place," Melissa said, smiling. "When you have people over for dinner parties and things." Everyone knew I didn't host dinner parties. My apartment barely fit a table for 2. But a few women laughed politely anyway. Around 2 in the afternoon, a woman I didn't recognize showed up late. She was older, maybe 55, with expensive jewelry and the kind of tan that comes from vacations, not yard work. She hugged Melissa like they were old friends. "Everyone, this is Paige," Melissa announced. "My life coach from California. She flew all the way here just for this. Paige made a little speech about Melissa's journey to authentic love, and how proud she was to see Melissa claiming her happiness. She gave Melissa a gift, a leather journal with Melissa's initials stamped on the cover. Mom cried. Actual tears. She hugged Paige and said, "Thank you for helping my daughter find herself." I was in the kitchen rinsing champagne flutes when Paige came in to refill her water glass. She looked at me like she was trying to place my face. "You're the sister," she said. "Not a question." "Joanna," I said. "Melissa talks about you all the time." Paige smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "She says you were such a huge help with the kids." "I did what needed to be done." "That's so sweet." Paige tilted her head, studying me. "You know, Melissa was so worried about how you'd react to the engagement. She really values your support." I set down the glass I was holding. "Does she?" "Oh, absolutely. She said you've always been the strong one. The one who doesn't need a lot of attention." Paige touched my arm just briefly. "That's a gift, you know. Being low maintenance." I didn't say anything. Paige squeezed my shoulder once, then walked back to the living room. I stood there with my hands in the soapy water, staring at the window over the sink. Low maintenance. Like I was a plant that didn't need watering. The shower ended around 4. Women left with little bags of Jordan almonds and slices of cake wrapped in napkins. I stayed to clean up. Melissa disappeared upstairs to take a nap. Mom and I worked in silence, packing up leftover food, folding chairs, throwing away torn wrapping paper. "That went well, don't you think?" Mom said, scraping frosting off a plate into the trash. "It was nice," I said. "Paige is wonderful, isn't she? So insightful. She really helped Melissa get her priorities straight." I tied off a garbage bag and set it by the back door. "What priorities?" Mom looked at me over her reading glasses. "Well, coming home. Being a mother. Settling down with someone stable." She paused. "Trevor's a good man, Joanna. He'll take care of her." "He proposed to me first," I said quietly. My mother went very still. Then she wiped her hands on a dish towel and folded it in precise thirds. "People change their minds," she said. "It happens. You can't take it personally. He proposed to me in January. Melissa came home in March. By May they were dating." "Joanna." Mom's voice had that warning edge. "I don't want to do this right now. I'm tired. I raised her kids for 4 years. And that was very kind of you." She hung the towel on the oven handle. "But Melissa's their mother. She needed time to figure things out, and now she has. You should be happy for her." I stared at my mother. At the woman who used to braid my hair before school, who used to save me the corner brownie because she knew I liked the crispy edges. That woman was gone. Or maybe she'd never existed the way I remembered. "I am happy for her," I lied. Mom smiled. "Good. Because she wants you to be maid of honor. Isn't that sweet? She's going to ask you officially next week." I drove home with the windows down even though it was cold for April. I needed the noise. I needed the wind to drown out the sound of my mother's voice saying, "People change their minds," like Trevor was a restaurant reservation, not the man who told me he wanted to spend his life with me. When I got back to my apartment, there were toys still in the corner of the living room. A stuffed elephant Mason used to sleep with. A plastic tea set Chloe loved. I'd kept them in case the twins visited. In case Melissa let me see them. I sat on the floor next to those toys and called my grandfather Donald. He was the only person in my family who'd ever treated me like I mattered. He answered on the second ring. "Joanna," he said. "I was hoping you'd call. Were you at the bridal shower? Your grandmother would have killed me if I'd shown up to something like that." He chuckled. "How bad was it?" "Mom asked me to be maid of honor." Donald was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Are you going to do it?" I looked at the stuffed elephant. At the tea set. At the corner of my apartment that used to be an office before it became a makeshift nursery. "I don't know yet," I said. "Well," Donald said slowly, "whatever you decide, you call me if you need anything. You hear me? Anything at all." "I will." "And Joanna?" His voice got softer. "Your grandmother's ring was supposed to be yours. Your mother promised her." "I know. I haven't forgotten that," he said. "Neither should you." We hung up. I sat on the floor until it got dark outside, until the streetlights came on and I could hear my neighbors moving around in the unit above mine. I thought about what Paige said. Low maintenance. The The strong one. The one who doesn't need attention. I thought about Trevor feeding Melissa cake at the engagement party. I thought about my mother crying happy tears into Melissa's hair. I thought about 4 years of waking up at 2 a.m. with sick toddlers, of missing work because the daycare called, of using my grocery budget to buy the twins' winter coats because Melissa's checks were delayed. Then I thought about my grandmother's ring on Melissa's finger. The ring my mother promised me when I was 16, sitting at this exact kitchen table after my first heartbreak, telling me someday I'd find someone who deserved me. I picked up my phone and texted Melissa, "I'd be honored to be your maid of honor." She responded in 30 seconds with 7 heart emojis and "OMG, you're the best." I set the phone down and smiled. Not because I was happy. Because I'd just made a decision. Have you ever been the person everyone calls when they need something but nobody calls when you need help? Tell me in the comments. And if you've made it this far, hit subscribe. What happens next changes everything. The decision I'd made was simple. I was going to show up to everything. Every wedding planning meeting, every dress fitting, every family dinner. I was going to smile and nod and be the perfect maid of honor. And I was going to watch very carefully. Melissa's first official request came 3 days later. She needed help addressing invitations. 200 of them. She texted me on a Wednesday afternoon while I was shelving returns in the library. "Can you come over Saturday? Mom's making lunch and we can work on invites together. Bring your good handwriting, L." I showed up at 11 with a set of calligraphy pens I'd bought at the craft store on King Street for $18.99. The house smelled like lemon furniture polish and something baking. Mom was in the kitchen wearing an apron I'd given her for Christmas 3 years ago. Melissa was at the dining room table in yoga pants and a tank top, scrolling through her phone. "Oh good, you're here," Mom said when I walked in. She didn't get up from the stove. "The invitation list is on the table. Melissa's handwriting is terrible, so this is perfect." I sat down. The list had names and addresses typed out in a spreadsheet. Most of them were people I didn't know. Trevor's family, Melissa's friends from high school, Mom's garden club, people from church. My name wasn't on the list as a guest. Just as maid of honor in the wedding party column. Melissa looked up from her phone. "You're a lifesaver, Joe. I have literally no patience for this stuff." "It's fine," I said. I picked up the first invitation. Heavy cardstock, cream-colored, expensive. The kind that cost $3 each before postage. "Karen, you raised such a special soul." The voice came from the kitchen doorway. Paige walked in carrying a bouquet of white roses wrapped in brown paper. She handed them to my mother like they were old friends exchanging gifts. Mom actually gasped. "Paige, you didn't have to do this. I saw them and thought of you." Paige squeezed Mom's shoulders from behind, the same way she'd squeezed Melissa's at the bridal shower. "A beautiful home deserves beautiful flowers." I kept my eyes on the invitation I was addressing. My handwriting came out perfect, each letter slanted at exactly the same angle. Years of writing call numbers on library cards had given me steady hands. Paige pulled out the chair next to me and sat down. She smelled like expensive perfume, the kind sold in department stores with names I couldn't pronounce. "Joanna," she said warmly. "How are you holding up with all this wedding chaos?" "I'm fine. Melissa told me you've been such a help. Addressing all these invitations by hand." She shook her head like I'd done something extraordinary. "That's real dedication." I finished the address I was working on and reached for the next blank envelope. Paige watched me for a moment, then leaned in slightly. "You know, I do some coaching for women in transition," she said quietly. "Life changes, career pivots, that sort of thing. If you ever want to talk about finding your path, I'd love to help." "I have a path," I said. "Of course you do." Paige smiled. "I just meant, if you ever wanted to explore something bigger. You seem like someone with a lot of untapped potential." Melissa laughed from across the table. "Joe's happy at the library, Paige. She's not really the ambitious type." I set down my pen. "What does that mean?" "Nothing bad." Melissa waved her hand. "You're just content. You don't need the big career or the fancy life. It's actually kind of nice. Not everyone has to be a go-getter." Paige nodded like Melissa had said something wise. Contentment is underrated in our culture. I picked up my pen again. I addressed 14 more invitations while they talked about wedding flowers and whether the reception should have a champagne wall or a signature cocktail. Mom brought out chicken salad sandwiches on white bread with the crusts cut off. Nobody asked if I wanted one. Melissa just put a plate in front of me and kept talking. Around 2 in the afternoon, the front door opened and I heard small voices. The twins. They came running into the dining room and Chloe saw me first. Aunt Jojo. She launched herself at my chair, wrapping her arms around my waist. Mason was right behind her, grabbing my hand. "We missed you so much," Chloe said into my shirt. Melissa's jaw tightened. She set down her iced tea and forced a bright smile. "Guys, remember what we talked about? Mommy's here now. Aunt Jojo was just helping out before." "When are we coming to your house again?" Mason asked me. His face was so hopeful it hurt to look at. "I don't know, buddy," I said honestly. "You should ask Mommy," Melissa said, her voice sharp. "I'm the one who makes those decisions now." Chloe's grip on my waist loosened. She looked up at me with those big dark eyes, the same eyes I'd looked into 1,000 times when she'd woken up from nightmares. "Are you mad at us?" "No, sweetheart. I could never be mad at you. Joanna." My mother's voice cut across the room. She was standing in the kitchen doorway with her arms crossed. "Maybe you should give them some space to bond with Melissa. They just need time to readjust." I looked at my mother. At the woman who'd let me raise these children for 4 years and was now telling me to step back so my sister could play house with them. Paige was watching the whole scene with this thoughtful expression like she was taking notes. "Of course," I said. I gently untangled myself from Chloe's arms. "You two be good for your mom, okay?" Mason's eyes filled with tears, but he didn't cry. He just nodded. They followed Melissa upstairs, looking back at me twice before they disappeared around the corner. I went back to addressing invitations. My handwriting stayed perfect. Each loop, each line exactly where it should be. I finished the stack by 4:30. 197 envelopes, all ready to mail. "You're amazing," Melissa said, gathering them up. "Seriously, I owe you. Don't worry about it." I helped Mom clean up the sandwich plates and the glasses with condensation rings on the bottom. Paige had left at some point without saying goodbye to me. When I went to get my purse from the hall table, I heard voices upstairs. Melissa and Mom, talking in Mom's bedroom with the door half open. "She's being weird about this," Melissa said. "She's fine. She's just adjusting." That was Mom. "Paige thinks she might be struggling more than she's letting on. Like, emotionally. Joanna's always been resilient. She'll be fine. I just don't want her making this about her, you know? This is my time." I stood very still in the hallway. The stairs creaked under old wood, but they didn't hear me. "Melissa, honey, Joanna agreed to be your maid of honor. She's helping with invitations. What more do you want?" "I want her to be actually happy for me, not just going through the motions." There was a pause. Then my mother said something I'll never forget. "Your sister doesn't know how to be anything but useful. It's all she's ever been good at. Just let her do what she does best and try not to take it personally." I walked out the front door. I got in my Civic and I drove to the harbor. I parked near the Battery and watched the water for a long time, until the sun started going down and the tourists with their cameras went back to their hotels. Useful. That's all I'd ever been good at. My phone buzzed. A text from Melissa. "Thanks again for today. You're the best sister ever." I didn't reply. I sat there until the streetlights came on, and then I drove to my grandfather's condo on the other side of the peninsula. Donald answered in his old cardigan and reading glasses, holding a book with his finger marking the page. He took one look at my face and stepped aside to let me in. "Tell me," he said. So I did. "If you've ever felt like you were only valued for what you could do for someone, not for who you are, I need you to know you're not alone. Hit subscribe and join this community. We're building something here. And trust me, what happens next is worth staying for." What happened next came faster than I expected. Donald and I had talked for 2 hours that night at his condo. He'd made tea in his old kettle, the one that whistled when it boiled, and we'd sat at his small kitchen table overlooking the water. He didn't give me advice. He just listened. When I finally left around 9, he walked me to the door and said, "You're stronger than they think you are. Don't forget that." I went home and slept for 10 hours straight. When I woke up, it was Sunday morning and Trevor had texted me at 6:47 a.m. "Can we meet for coffee? Need to talk." I stared at that message for 5 minutes. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Part of me wanted to throw my phone across the room. But I texted back. "Coastal Coffee. 10 a.m. He was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups in front of him. He'd ordered for me a vanilla latte, the same thing I'd been getting since we started dating. He looked tired. His shirt was wrinkled like he'd slept in it. "Hey," he said when I sat down. "Hey." He pushed the latte toward me. I didn't touch it. We sat there in silence for maybe 30 seconds before he finally spoke. "I know this is weird," Trevor said. "The timing of everything." "Which part? You asking for space or you getting engaged to my sister?" His jaw tensed. "It wasn't planned, Joe. It just happened." "How does that just happen?" "She was around. We started talking. She understood what I was going through with the business, with the stress." He ran his hand through his hair. "You were always so focused on the twins, on your family drama." I felt like I couldn't breathe. I took a sip of the latte. It was too sweet. He told them extra vanilla, the way I used to like it 2 years ago before I switched to regular. He hadn't noticed I'd changed. "When did it start?" I asked. "Does that matter?" "Yes." Trevor looked out the window. A family was walking by with a stroller, the dad carrying a toddler on his shoulders. "April," he said quietly. "Maybe late March." I'd been raising Melissa's children in March. I'd been taking Mason to speech therapy twice a week because he wasn't talking as much as he should. I'd been staying up late helping Chloe through a phase where she was terrified of the dark. Trevor had come over for dinner on a Tuesday in March, and I'd apologized for being distracted because Chloe had thrown up that morning and I was worried it was the flu. "You proposed to me in January," I said. "I know. Were you already interested in her then?" "No. I swear, Joe, it wasn't like that." He leaned forward, his elbows on the table. "I meant it when I proposed. But then everything with Melissa coming back and your mom needing help with the house, and you were just so consumed with fixing everyone else's problems. I started feeling like I wasn't a priority." I set down the cup. "So you started sleeping with my sister." "Don't say it like that." "How should I say it?" Trevor's voice dropped. "I'm sorry. I am. But you have to understand, Melissa was different. She was fun. She didn't have all this baggage weighing her down." Baggage. He meant the twins. He meant the 4 years I'd spent raising children who weren't mine so their mother could find herself on a beach in San Diego. "When were you going to tell me?" I asked. I tried. That's why I asked for space. I was going to talk to you after the wedding, explain everything properly. You were going to wait until after you married her to tell me you'd been cheating on me for months? "We're not married yet, Joe. That's why I wanted to talk now. To clear the air before things got more complicated." I looked at him. At this man I'd thought I was going to spend my life with. He'd helped me paint my apartment last summer. He'd fixed the loose cabinet door in my kitchen. He told me he wanted 3 kids and a dog and a house with a big backyard. "Does she know you proposed to me?" I asked. "Yeah. She knows." "And she didn't care?" Trevor shifted in his seat. "She said you'd understand eventually. That you're practical like that." "Practical. Useful. Low maintenance." I was collecting descriptions like scars. "I need to go," I said. "Joe, wait. I want us to be okay. Melissa wants that too. We're going to be family and it would mean a lot if you could." "Could what?" "Be happy for you. Just not make this harder than it has to be." I stood up. "I'm her maid of honor. I'm addressing invitations and planning showers and showing up to every fitting. What more do you want from me?" Trevor looked relieved. Like I'd just agreed to something reasonable. "Thank you. Really. This means a lot to Melissa." I walked out of the coffee shop and sat in my car in the parking lot. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't get the key in the ignition on the first try. I finally started the engine and drove to the library even though it was Sunday and we were closed. I let myself in with my staff key and sat at my desk in the quiet. My phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. I answered. "Joanna, where are you?" "We're all at the house for Sunday brunch. Melissa made mimosas." "I'm at work." "On Sunday?" "Honey, you need to take a break. Come join us. Paige is here and she brought the most beautiful centerpiece ideas for the reception tables." "I can't. I have things to do." There was a pause. "Trevor called me. He said you two talked this morning." "He did. He's worried about you. We all are." Mom's voice got softer, the way it did when she was about to say something she thought was kind. "Sweetheart, I know this is hard. But you have to let go and move forward." Trevor and Melissa are happy together and that's what matters. You wouldn't want to stand in the way of that. I pressed my forehead against the cool surface of my desk. No. I wouldn't want that. Good. I'm glad you're being mature about this. Now come have brunch. Melissa really wants you here. I'll try. I hung up. I didn't go to brunch. I stayed at the library until the sun started setting, reorganizing the biography section even though it didn't need it. When I finally went home, there were 7 texts in the family group chat. Photos of mimosas, of Paige's centerpiece ideas, of the twins wearing matching outfits Melissa had bought them. In one photo, Chloe was sitting on Mom's lap. In another, Mason was holding Melissa's hand. The last text was from Melissa. Missed you today, Joe. Next Sunday for sure. I was about to put my phone down when it buzzed again. Not the family chat. A private text from Donald. Dinner this week? Wednesday work for you? I typed back, yes. Thank you. He replied immediately, Harbor Club. 6 p.m. And Joanna? Bring a pen and paper. We need to make a list. I stared at that message. A list. I didn't know what kind of list he meant, but something about those words made me sit up straighter. For the first time in months, I felt something other than numb resignation. Wednesday couldn't come fast enough. Wednesday came. I took a half day at work, told my supervisor I had a dentist appointment. I got to the Harbor Club 15 minutes early and waited in my car, watching the sailboats rock gently in their slips. The restaurant sat right on the water, the kind of place with cloth napkins and a wine list printed on heavy paper. Donald was already inside when I walked in. He'd gotten us a table by the window, away from the lunch crowd. He stood up when he saw me, gave me a brief hug, and we both sat down. The waiter came by with water and menus. Donald ordered the crab cakes without looking at the menu. I ordered a salad I knew I wouldn't finish. Did you bring what I asked? He said once the waiter left. I pulled out a small notebook and a pen from my purse. I wasn't sure what kind of list you meant. The kind that helps you think clearly. He took a sip of water. First question. Do you still love Trevor? The question caught me off guard. I opened my mouth, closed it, then finally said, no. I don't think I do anymore. Good. That makes this easier. He leaned back in his chair, his hands resting on the armrests. Second question. Do you want to stop the wedding? I don't know. That's an answer too. The waiter brought bread and Donald waited until he left before continuing. Here's what I've been thinking about since we talked. Your grandmother left that ring to you in her will. Did you know that? I shook my head. She wrote it down specifically. My engagement ring goes to Joanna Marie Reeves. Your mother was supposed to give it to you when you got engaged. Instead, she gave it to Melissa. He buttered a piece of bread slowly, methodically. That's theft, technically. But I don't think you want to take your mother to court. No. So we need to think differently. He set down the butter knife. Tell me what you want. Not what you think you should want. What you actually want. I stared at the notebook in front of me. The blank page felt enormous. I want them to know what they did. I want my mother to see that I mattered. I want Melissa to understand that she can't just take whatever she wants and call it destiny. And the twins. My throat tightened. I want to see them. I want them to know I didn't abandon them. Donald nodded. Write that down. Top of the page. What you want. I wrote it in careful letters. The pen felt heavy in my hand. Now, Donald said, here's what I know that you don't. I visit your mother every Sunday after church. I've been doing it since your father died. She thinks I'm just a lonely old man who needs company. He smiled, but there was something sharp in it. Last Sunday I was there when Paige and Melissa were talking in the kitchen. They didn't know I was in the hall. What did they say? Paige asked Melissa if she was sure about Trevor. Said something about him being a rebound, about whether the wedding was moving too fast. He paused. Melissa said it didn't matter because once they were married, Trevor would have access to the trust fund his parents set up for him. $50,000 that unlocks when he gets married before he turns 35. I set down my pen. He's 33. Exactly. And Melissa knew that. Paige knew that. They were laughing about it, actually. About how easy it was to convince him he was in love. The waiter brought our food. I looked at the salad on my plate and felt nothing. Donald cut into his crab cake, chewed thoughtfully, then continued. I'm telling you this because you need to know who you're dealing with. Your sister didn't steal your fiancé because she fell madly in love. She did it because Paige told her to, and Paige is coaching her through this whole thing for money. Why would Mom agree to that? Because Paige promised her something too. I haven't figured out what yet, but they're too friendly for it to be random. He took another bite. The point is, this isn't about love. It's about money and control and your mother trying to fix the daughter she actually cares about. I picked up my fork, put it down again. What am I supposed to do with this information? Whatever you want. But you asked me what kind of list we're making. He tapped the notebook. We're making a list of facts. Things you know for certain. Things you can prove. Things that other people will believe when the time comes. I wrote, Paige is being paid. Melissa knows about Trevor's trust fund. Good, Donald said. Now write this. The twins ask about you. Constantly. I've heard it 4 times now. Melissa tells them you're too busy, that you've moved on. I wrote it down, my handwriting getting messy. She's lying to them. Yes. And that matters. Because at the end of this, whatever you decide to do, those kids need to know the truth. He finished his crab cake and pushed his plate aside. Here's my suggestion. You accept the maid of honor position. You show up to everything. You smile. You help. You make yourself indispensable. Why? Because the closer you are, the more you see. The more you hear. The more you understand exactly how this whole thing is supposed to work. He pulled out his phone, scrolled for a moment, then turned it toward me. Watch this. It was a video, shaky and clearly filmed without anyone knowing. I could see Mom's backyard through the window. Mason and Chloe were building a fort out of couch cushions and a bedsheet. They were laughing the way kids do when they're completely absorbed in play. Then Mason stopped and looked up. When's Aunt Jojo coming back? The camera stayed on the kids, but I heard Melissa's voice from somewhere off screen. She's busy, honey. She doesn't really have time for you anymore. But that's okay because Mommy's here now. Chloe's face fell. But I miss her. I know, sweetie. But sometimes people leave. It's not your fault. The video ended. I handed the phone back to Donald with shaking hands. When did you take that? Sunday. I was out back pretending to check on the garden. He put the phone away. I've got 3 more like it. All the same pattern. The kids ask, Melissa lies, and your mother says nothing. I looked down at my notebook. At the list that was starting to form. Facts. Evidence. Truth. What do? I asked. First you finish that salad. You're paying for it. He smiled just slightly. Then you go home and you think. You've got 3 months until the wedding. That's a long time to decide what kind of person you want to be when this is over. What kind of person do you think I should be? The kind who doesn't let people rewrite history. The kind who shows up for kids who need her. The kind who takes back what was stolen, even if it's just the truth. He signaled for the check. You're stronger than they think, Joanna. You always have been. We left the restaurant around 2. Donald walked me to my car, and before I got in he handed me a business card. It had a name on it I didn't recognize and a phone number. What's this? A lawyer. Family law specialist. Just in case you need one down the road. He squeezed my shoulder once. Call me if you need anything. And Joanna, don't tell your mother we had lunch. Not yet. I drove back to my apartment with the notebook on the passenger seat and that business card tucked into the sun visor. When I got home I sat at my tiny kitchen table and I finished the list. Facts. Things I knew. Things I could prove. By the time I was done it was 3 pages long. The next morning I called Melissa and told her I'd be honored to be her maid of honor. She squealed on the phone, said I was the best sister in the world, said she knew I'd come around. I agreed to everything she asked. Every dress fitting, every planning session, every family dinner. I showed up early. I stayed late. I took notes. I watched. I listened. And I waited. What would you do if you had the chance to finally set things right? Tell me in the comments. And if this story is hitting close to home, hit that like button and subscribe. The people in this community understand. I waited 3 months. 92 days of showing up, smiling, taking notes, and saying yes to everything Melissa asked. The first planning meeting was at a bridal boutique on Broad Street. Melissa brought Paige, Mom, and 2 bridesmaids I'd never met before. The consultant pulled dresses in shades of blush and ivory while Melissa sat on a velvet couch drinking Prosecco at 11 in the morning. "Joe, you'll look great in champagne," Melissa said, holding up a swatch of fabric against my face. "It washes you out a little, but that's fine. I want to be the only one who really pops in the photos. I tried on the dress she picked. It cost $340. That was more than my rent. The consultant pinned the hem while I stood on a platform in front of mirrors that showed me from every angle. Paige took a photo and posted it to Instagram with a caption about sisterhood. Over the next 2 months I went to 11 planning meetings. I addressed the rest of the invitations Melissa didn't feel like finishing. I called caterers to confirm head counts. I picked up centerpieces from a wholesaler in North Charleston because Melissa's car was too small. I drove the twins to their Flower Girl dress fitting when Mom had book club and Melissa had a spa appointment. Every time I saw the twins they asked when they could come to my apartment again. Every time I told them soon. Every time I watched them believe me. The rehearsal dinner was on a Friday night in early June. Magnolia Plantation, the same place where I'd taken the twins for a birthday party when they were 3. The gardens were in full bloom, azaleas and camellias everywhere, the Spanish moss hanging from the oak trees like something out of a postcard. I wore a navy dress I'd owned for 4 years. Melissa wore white even though it was just the rehearsal. The dress had lace sleeves and cost $480. I knew because she'd texted me a photo from the boutique with the caption, "Too much? JK, I'm getting it anyway." Dinner was served on long tables under string lights. Grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, some kind of pasta salad with sun-dried tomatoes. I sat at the end of one table, next to Trevor's cousin who spent the whole meal talking about his boat. Paige sat at the head table with Mom and Melissa, the three of them like a unit. Halfway through dinner, Paige stood up with her wine glass. The conversations died down. She tapped the glass with her fork and everyone turned to look at her. "I just want to say a few words about this incredible woman," Paige began, gesturing toward Melissa. "I met Melissa 4 years ago when she was at her lowest point. Lost. Searching. Trying to figure out who she was meant to be. She went on for 3 minutes about transformation and authentic love and the courage it takes to follow your heart." People nodded. Some of them teared up. Paige finished with, "Melissa, you are a light. And Trevor, you are so lucky to have found her." Everyone clapped. Melissa wiped her eyes and mouthed thank you across the table. Then she stood up and took the microphone from Paige. "I want to thank my amazing life coach for that beautiful toast," Melissa said, her voice catching. "And I want to thank my mom for supporting me through everything. But most of all, I want to thank my sister Joanna." She looked directly at me. Every head at every table turned. "Joe, you raised my babies when I couldn't. You gave up 4 years of your life to make sure they were safe and loved. You're a saint." She pressed her hand to her chest. "I'll never be able to repay you for that sacrifice." Everyone clapped again. Louder this time. I could feel them looking at me expecting some kind of response. I raised my wine glass and nodded. That was all I gave them. Trevor's mother caught my eye from across the table. She'd been quiet all night, barely touching her food. When Melissa sat back down, Trevor's mother leaned over to her husband and whispered something. He shook his head. She whispered again, more insistently. I couldn't hear what she said, but I saw the way she looked at me. Like she wanted to apologize for something that wasn't her fault. After dinner, people mingled in the gardens. Father Tim Brennan found me standing near the fountain away from the crowd. He was a tall man in his 60s with gray hair and the kind of calm presence that made people confess things they hadn't planned to say. "You're handling this with remarkable grace," he said. I'd started seeing him for counseling in April after Trevor asked for space. He knew everything. The twins, the engagement, the stolen ring, all of it. "I'm doing what I need to do," I said. "God sees what people do in the dark, Joanna. Remember that. I'm counting on it." He studied my face for a moment, then nodded. "If you need anything tomorrow, you let me know. I'll be at the church all morning." "Thank you, Father." He walked away. I stayed by the fountain until Melissa found me and asked me to help load gifts into Mom's car. I carried boxes of picture frames and kitchen gadgets while Melissa directed me on where to put them. Paige supervised from the porch, sipping wine and laughing at something on her phone. The rehearsal ended around 10. I drove home with the windows down, the warm summer air blowing through the car. My phone buzzed at a red light. A text from Donald. "Everything's still on schedule?" I typed back, "Yes. Tomorrow morning." He sent back a thumbs up emoji. Nothing else. I set my alarm for 4:45 a.m. and went to bed. When it went off the next morning, I didn't hit snooze. I got up, made coffee and sat on my balcony in my pajamas. The historic district was quiet at that hour. A few joggers, some people walking dogs, the street sweeper making its rounds. My bridesmaid dress hung on the back of my closet door, still in the garment bag from the boutique. My phone started buzzing at 9:30. The bridal party group chat. 17 messages in 10 minutes. Melissa, everyone needs to be here by 10. Hair and makeup starts at 10:30. Bridesmaid 1, on my way. Bridesmaid 2, just parked. Melissa, Joe, where are you? I didn't respond. I got dressed in jeans and a t-shirt. I drove to the bakery on King Street and bought flour, sugar, butter, vanilla extract and food coloring. Then I drove to the address Donald had given me the day before. It was a small house on a quiet street in West Ashley. Donald's car was already in the driveway. I parked behind it and grabbed the grocery bags from the passenger seat. Donald opened the door before I could knock. They're in the kitchen, he said. Other grandmother dropped them off 20 minutes ago. Thinks I'm watching them until noon. I walked into the kitchen and saw them. Mason and Chloe, sitting at a small table coloring in activity books. They looked up when they heard my footsteps. Aunt JoJo. Chloe screamed. She jumped out of her chair and ran to me. Mason was right behind her. They wrapped their arms around my waist and I knelt down to hug them properly. We missed you so much, Mason said into my shoulder. I missed you too, buddy. Are you coming to Mommy's wedding? Chloe asked. Maybe later. But right now I thought we could bake cookies. Would you like that? They both nodded so hard I thought their heads might fall off. I set the grocery bags on the counter and started pulling out ingredients. Donald stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching. You're sure about this? He asked quietly. Completely. My phone buzzed again. And again. And again. I turned it face down on the counter and didn't look at it. The twins and I spent the next 2 hours making star-shaped cookies with blue and yellow frosting. They got flour all over their clothes. They licked the spoons. They laughed so hard Mason got the hiccups. At noon my phone rang. Not a text. An actual call. From Melissa. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. I let that one go too. At 12:45, Donald's phone rang. He stepped into the other room to answer it. When he came back he said, That was your mother. The wedding's supposed to start in an hour and 10 minutes. Melissa's hysterical. They can't find the twins. Where are they? I asked, looking at Mason and Chloe who were carefully placing sprinkles on their cookies. Donald smiled. With me. Safe and sound. Eating cookies with their Aunt JoJo. I smiled back. Exactly where they should be. At 1:15 the twins and I finished decorating the last batch of cookies. Blue frosting, yellow stars. Sprinkles scattered across Donald's kitchen table like confetti. Chloe had frosting on her nose. Mason had it in his hair. They were happy. My phone started ringing at 1:45. Melissa's name flashed across the screen. I let it ring. It stopped, then started again immediately. I silenced it and set it face down on the counter. Who keeps calling? Chloe asked, licking frosting off her finger. Nobody important, I said. Donald checked his watch. Ceremony starts in 15 minutes. I know. The phone buzzed 17 more times in the next 10 minutes. Calls, texts, voicemails piling up. I didn't look at any of them. We took the cookies outside to Donald's porch and sat on the steps in the shade. The twins ate 2 cookies each while I drank water from a plastic cup Donald handed me. At exactly 2 p.m. Donald's phone rang. He answered it, listened for 30 seconds, then said, They're with me. They're fine. No, I'm not bringing them. He hung up. Who was that? I asked. Your mother. She's panicking. He sat down next to me on the steps. The ceremony was supposed to start 5 minutes ago. You're not there. The twins aren't there. Apparently Melissa is losing her mind in the bridal suite. Good. Mason looked up at me. Are we supposed to be somewhere? Not if you don't want to be. We want to stay here, Chloe said immediately. With you. At 2:15 a car pulled up to the curb. The twins' other grandmother, Patricia, got out looking flustered. She was wearing a coral dress and heels that were too high for her. She walked up the driveway quickly, her purse swinging against her hip. Donald, what's going on? She said. I got a call from Karen saying the twins need to be at the church right now. They're happy where they are, Donald said calmly. Patricia looked at me, then at the twins covered in cookie crumbs and frosting. Joanna, the wedding is starting. They're the flower children. Melissa is waiting. They don't want to go, I said. That's not really their decision to make. They're 6 years old. I stood up. Actually, it is their decision. Mason, Chloe, do you want to go to the wedding? Chloe shook her head. Mason said, we want to stay with you, Aunt Jojo. Patricia's mouth opened and closed. This is ridiculous. Melissa specifically chose them for this. It's important to her. Where was Melissa when they had nightmares? I asked quietly. Where was she when Mason needed speech therapy? When Chloe learned to read? That's not fair, Joanna. She was going through something. So were they. And I was here. Patricia looked at Donald for help. He just shrugged. They chose, he said. I'm not going to force them into a car. She stood there for another minute, her face going red, then she turned and walked back to her car. She called someone as she drove away. I could see her gesturing wildly through the windshield. By 2:30 my phone had 43 missed calls. Donald's phone rang again. This time he put it on speaker. It was Mom. Her voice was tight and sharp. Donald, this isn't funny anymore. The guests are getting restless. Melissa is beside herself. You need to bring those children here immediately. No, Donald said. What do you mean no? I mean I'm not doing it. The twins are happy. They're safe. They're exactly where they want to be. This is Joanna's doing, isn't it? Mom's voice cracked. She's sabotaging her own sister's wedding out of spite. I took the phone from Donald. I didn't take anything from you, Melissa, I said calmly. I just stopped giving. There was silence on the other end. Then Mom said, what are you talking about? Joanna, this isn't about you. It never was. That's the problem. I hung up. The twins were watching me with wide eyes, but they didn't look scared. They looked curious. At 2:45 another car pulled up. Trevor's brother, Jake, got out wearing his groomsman tux. He walked up to the porch slowly, his hands in his pockets. Hey Joanna, he said. This is awkward. Yeah. Melissa sent me to get the twins. She says the ceremony can't start without them. I stood in the doorway with my arms crossed. They don't want to go. I get that. But there are 200 people sitting in that church and it's getting weird. He ran his hand through his hair. Look, I know this whole situation is messed up. Trevor shouldn't have done what he did. But can you just let them walk down the aisle? 5 minutes. Then I'll bring them right back here. No. Joanna, please. My mom is already crying and not in a good way. They're happy here, I said. That's all that matters. Jake looked at the twins who were now coloring again at the kitchen table inside. He sighed. Yeah. I can see that. He turned to leave, then stopped. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. My brother's an idiot. He drove away. Donald checked his phone and started laughing. What? I asked. Your mother just texted me. Said if I don't bring those kids in the next 10 minutes, she's calling the police. Let her. But she didn't call the police. Instead, according to the text Donald got from Father Brennan at 3:05, something else happened. Melissa was in the hallway outside the sanctuary, crying and yelling at Mom. Guests were filing out into the hallway to see what was happening. Trevor was standing near the groomsmen looking shell-shocked. Father Brennan, trying to calm everyone down, asked Melissa a simple question to clarify his notes. Just to confirm for my records, you mentioned you and Trevor have been together for 2 years? Melissa, distracted and furious, snapped back. Yes, 2 years, we've been over this. The hallway went quiet. Trevor's face drained of color. He looked at Melissa, then at Father Brennan, then back at Melissa. 2 years. Trevor said slowly. Melissa realized what she'd said. Her eyes went wide. I meant, no, Melissa, I proposed to Joanna 18 months ago. Trevor's voice was flat. We were engaged 6 months ago. If you and I have been together for 2 years, that means. It was a mistake. I misspoke. When did we start dating? Trevor asked. Melissa looked at Mom for help. Mom stepped forward, her hand on Melissa's shoulder. Trevor, this isn't the time. Everyone's upset. Let's just get through the ceremony and we can talk about this later. When? Trevor said again, louder this time. April? March. When I was still with Joanna. People were pulling out their phones. Bridesmaids were whispering to each other. Trevor's mother had her hand over her mouth. Father Brennan cleared his throat. I think we need to pause and take a moment. No, Melissa said. No, we're getting married. Right now. Everyone's here. We're doing this. Trevor shook his head. You lied to me. You told me you and I got together after I broke up with Joanna. I didn't lie. You've been planning this the whole time, haven't you? Trevor's voice broke. Paige, your mom, all of it. This was a setup. He turned and walked out of the church. Just walked straight through the main doors into the parking lot. Melissa tried to follow him, but her dress was too big and the train caught on the door frame. By the time she got outside, Trevor's truck was already pulling out onto the street. Donald got all of this in text from Father Brennan, who wrote, "Wedding's off." Trevor left. Melissa's having a breakdown in the parking lot. Your mother is yelling at Paige. Guests are leaving. This is the most dramatic thing I've seen in 30 years of ministry. I read the text twice, then handed the phone back to Donald. The twins were watching a cartoon on his iPad, completely oblivious. I sat down on the couch next to them and closed my eyes. You okay? Donald asked. Yeah, I said. I'm okay. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from an unknown number. I opened it. This is Paige. We need to talk. Now. Type karma if you believe secrets always come out eventually. Share this with someone who needs to hear that standing up for yourself is never wrong. And subscribe because stories like this need to be told. I deleted Paige's text without responding. Donald called me at 4:30 that afternoon. You need to come to the church parking lot, he said. Right now. Bring a notebook. I left the twins with Donald's neighbor, a retired teacher named Ruth who'd been bringing over cookies all afternoon. I drove to St. Philip's Church with my windows down and my hands steady on the wheel. The parking lot was nearly empty when I got there. A few stragglers loading gifts into cars, some teenagers in catering uniforms breaking down tables. Donald was standing near Mom's sedan. Paige was there too, still in her expensive dress from the rehearsal dinner, her arms crossed. Mom was leaning against the car door, her face blotchy and red. I parked and walked over. Nobody spoke until I was close enough to hear clearly. Tell her, Donald said to Paige. Paige looked at me with something like disdain. Your mother and I had a business arrangement. She hired me to help Melissa secure a stable future. I did my job. Now she's refusing to pay. How much? I asked. $40,000. I looked at Mom. Where were you getting $40,000? Mom wouldn't meet my eyes. She was picking at the hem of her jacket, a nervous habit she'd had since I was a kid. Karen, Donald said. Tell her. It was going to come from your inheritance eventually, Mom said quietly. I'm the executor until you turn 35. I have discretion over the funds for family expenses. This qualified. Paying someone to manipulate my sister into stealing my fiancé qualified as a family expense? It wasn't like that. Mom's voice cracked. Melissa needed help. She was lost. Paige had a plan to get her back on track, to give her stability, to make me look pathetic so Melissa could feel better about herself. I finished. Paige pulled out her phone. I have recordings. Karen agreed to everything. The strategy, the timeline, the payment structure. Play them, Donald said. Paige hesitated. She looked at Mom, then at me, then back at Donald. This is a private business matter. Play them or I call my lawyer right now and we discuss fraud, conspiracy and theft from a trust fund. Donald's voice was calm. Almost friendly. Your choice. Paige pressed play. The recording was clear, no static. Mom's voice came through the phone speaker, tinny but unmistakable. So you'll coach her on exactly what to say to Trevor? How to position herself as the better option. That was Paige, absolutely. We'll make Joanna look like the burden. The martyred sister who's too focused on everyone else's problems to be a real partner. Meanwhile, Melissa will be spontaneous, fun, uncomplicated. And the kids? Perfect leverage. Melissa reconnects with them just enough to look maternal, but Joanna's still doing the work. Trevor sees Melissa as a ready-made family without the actual responsibility. It's brilliant, really. Mom's voice again. And you're sure this will work? Karen, I've done this 17 times. Trust me. By June, they'll be engaged and Joanna will never know what hit her. What about payment? $40,000. Half up front, half when the wedding happens. You can pull it from Joanna's inheritance. She won't see the account statements until she's 35. By then, Melissa will be settled and Joanna will have moved on. Pause. Then Mom said something that made my stomach turn. Joanna will never know. She's too trusting. The recording ended. Paige slipped her phone back into her purse like she'd just played a voicemail about a dentist appointment. You see, Paige said to Mom. I fulfilled my end. Melissa and Trevor got engaged. The wedding falling apart isn't my fault. You still owe me the second half. Donald reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his checkbook. He clicked his pen, wrote something carefully, then tore out the check. He handed it to me. It was made out to me. $467,000. My entire inheritance from my father plus interest. What's this? I asked. Your money. All of it. Karen used $20,000 for Paige's first payment. I'm covering that plus what was left. He turned to Mom. You're no longer executor. I'm filing paperwork Monday morning. You'll never touch Joanna's money again. Mom's face went white. Donald, you can't do that. I'm her mother. You're a thief. And you're done. I folded the check and put it in my pocket. I looked at Paige. You're not getting the rest of your money. Sue her if you want. I don't care. Paige's jaw tightened. This is breach of contract. Then take it to court. Explain to a judge how you conspired to defraud a trust fund. I smiled. I'd love to watch that. Paige left without another word. She got into a rental car and drove away, her tires squealing slightly as she pulled out onto the street. Mom and I stood there in the parking lot. Donald had walked a few feet away, giving us space but staying close enough to intervene if needed. Joanna, Mom started. I was trying to help Melissa. She was struggling. You've always been fine on your own, but Melissa. Don't, I said. Just don't. I'm your mother. I deserve a chance to explain. You spent my inheritance paying someone to ruin my life. There's nothing to explain. Mom reached for my hand. I stepped back. Please. I made a mistake. But we're family. You can't just walk away. Yes, I can. I got in my car and drove back to Donald's house. The twins were watching a movie with Ruth. I thanked her, collected Mason and Chloe and drove them home. Not to Mom's house. To my apartment. They had spare clothes there from all the weekends they used to visit. I made them dinner, spaghetti with butter and Parmesan, Chloe's favorite, and we ate on my small couch watching cartoons. 3 days later, Melissa showed up at my apartment. It was a Tuesday evening just after 7. I was washing dishes when I heard the knock. I looked through the peephole and saw her standing there, no makeup, wearing sweatpants and a stained t-shirt. I opened the door but didn't step aside. Joe, she said. Her voice was hoarse. Can we talk? No. Please. Trevor won't answer my calls. Mom won't stop crying. Everything's falling apart and I need you to help me fix this. Fix what? All of it. Talk to Trevor. Tell him it was a misunderstanding. Tell him we really did fall in love naturally. Please. You're the only one he might listen to. I looked at my sister. At the woman who'd left her children with me for 4 years. Who'd stolen my fiancé, who'd let someone weaponize my kindness against me. I didn't take anything from you, Melissa, I said calmly. I just stopped giving. What does that even mean? It means you're on your own now. He started crying. You're my sister. You're supposed to be there for me. I was. For 4 years. While you were in California. I stepped back. I'm done now. I closed the door. She knocked 3 more times then left. I stood in my hallway listening to her footsteps fade down the stairs and I felt nothing. Not satisfaction. Not anger. Just a flat, quiet peace. That was a year ago. I'm writing this from my new apartment, a 2-bedroom place in a better neighborhood. I passed my foster parent certification in November. Mason and Chloe come every other weekend. Melissa has supervised visitation on Wednesday afternoons at a facility downtown. She shows up half the time. Donald filed a report with CPS documenting Melissa's 4-year absence. The state opened an investigation. Melissa didn't lose custody completely, but she didn't get it back either. The twins live with their other grandmother during the week. They stay with me on weekends. They're adjusting. Mom tried to reach out twice. Once through a text, once through Father Brennan. I didn't respond to either. Donald handles anything legal that involves her. I don't have to see her. I don't have to forgive her. I'm allowed to just move on. Trevor sent me a letter 4 months ago. He apologized. He said he was sorry for everything, that he'd been selfish and stupid. He said he hoped I was okay. I didn't write back. What would I say? I'm better than okay. I'm free. This morning Chloe called me mom for the first time. We were making pancakes and she said, "Mom, can I have chocolate chips in mine?" She froze right after she said it, like she'd done something wrong. I just smiled and said, "Of course you can, sweetheart. If you've ever had to choose yourself when everyone around you demanded you choose them instead, I see you. I know how hard that is. I know what it cost. Here's what I learned. People will take what you give freely and call you bitter when you stop. Setting boundaries isn't cruelty. It's survival. When you stop doing everything for everyone, they'll tell you you've changed. They're right. You have. That's the point. The people who truly love you don't need a crisis to show up. Donald called me every Sunday for a year. Father Brennan still checks in. Real love is quiet and consistent. It doesn't wait for drama to prove itself. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story meant something to you, hit like, subscribe, and check the description for more true stories about family, betrayal, and finding your people. This community we're building, it's for people like us. People who know what it means to stand up, walk away, and start over. You're not alone in this.